I'm in the parish church in which John Newton was the curate. John Newton, the author of the hymn Amazing Grace. He was a former slave trader. It is a most beautiful building. And I just had a chat to the rector and the vicar. This stained glass window here is dedicated to John Newton. That's him there. And it shows the ships that he formerly used to use in the slave trade. And up there it says, "He that does the truth comes to the light." I particularly like this. On this side it shows the brazen serpent being lifted up in the wilderness, and anyone who, when the children of Israel were being led out of Egypt into freedom, and anyone who looked at the brazen or brass serpent lived. And it was a forerunner or a type of Christ, who said, "If I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. And anyone who looks to Christ may live." Really cool to have the Old Covenant and the New Covenant represented in the stained glass windows of the church. You can see up there there's a really old wooden ceiling with beautiful bosses of angels alongside it. And this is the choir stalls. This is the new pulpit. It's probably still 150 years old, but it's not the one that John Newton preached from. He preached from that one over there in the far corner, which is now in the children's creche area. Something I'm quite enjoy seeing is that the children's creche area isn't blocked off from the rest of the church, so that the children aren't kept out. I really think it's important for there to be community. This church has been around since the 1200s. And stained glass window commemorating the Queen's Silver Jubilee, 1952 to 1977. Honi soit qui mal y pense. Around this corner here is a old baptismal font, very old. The newer one is there. Very beautiful, but newer. And the church has a little area here commemorating Cowper and Newton. And this board talking about him and the slave trade. He was born in 1725. Mum died when he was 6, and was taken to sea by his dad when he was 11. Turned against his mother's religion, was gang-pressed into the Navy when he was 19, and dumped 2 years later on the coast of Sierra Leone after having been flogged, where he met African slave traders, because a common misconception is that only white people were selling black people, but actually black people were selling black people to white people. And he started buying and selling slaves. And one time when he was coming back to England, he was caught up in a really violent storm and they were going to die. And he prayed for the first time in many years and said to God, please calm the seas and save us. And God did. And he turned to Christ and gave his life to God and realised over time that what he was doing was really, really repugnant. And he started working with this man, William Wilberforce, who was in Parliament. In fact, he wrote to William Wilberforce and said, God has raised you up for the good of the church and the good of the nation. Maintain your friendship with Pitt, who was then the Prime Minister of Britain. Continue in Parliament. Who knows that but for such a time as this, God has brought you into public life and has a purpose for you. And of course he's referring that such a time as this is a quote from the book of Esther in the Bible, where Esther the Queen saved the Jewish nation by approaching the king and interceding for her people on behalf of the Jewish people. And she said, in those days you couldn't just approach the king. She said, if I live, I live, and if I die, I die. Who knows that I have not been prepared for such a time as this? So that's what Newton was referring to when he wrote to William Wilberforce. Really a privilege to be here.